Hello and welcome back to RageGamingVideos. My name is Hollow and today we have our top picks for the Arcane weapons. With the recent patch, Arcane is actually working and that means we actually have scaling Arcane on our weapons. Arcane is also now working correctly with status build-up. So the more Arcane you have, the faster your bleed, your poison, your scarlet rot and so on. These statuses, they're going to build up even quicker. So yes, Arcane players are eating good right now, not just because, hey, it's actually working, but because, Jesus, these are some strong options for the game right now. Before we jump into the actual weapons, I do want to quickly explain something. You see, Arcane scaling works differently to the scaling of other stats, so your dex and strength and so on. Arcane soft caps as early as 20, and then even harder at 50, and then the true hard cap is at 80. So there's no point going over 80 if you are going to level Arcane for any purpose, and you need to go to 80 for a very specific purpose, like my as much bleed build up as fast as possible build, which again is a bit specific and not that universal. Interestingly, it also works differently for your Arcane spells. The soft cap is at 30, and then it hard caps quickly at 45. Unless you're using a pure catalyst that only scales with one stat, so the soft cap of that is a lot higher at 60, and hard caps again at 80. So these are my top picks for Arcane weapons. I'm going to talk about two weapons very quickly. We're going to talk about the Poleblade, of course, and the weapon I'm holding right now. This is the Rivers of Blood Katana. An extremely meta pick, known throughout the community at this point for being really strong. Before Arcane worked, this Corpse Piler Ash of War, let's take a look, was really good at catching people out in PvP. While the damage wasn't super great, it was really good for pressuring people and pulling out suddenly, you know, a surprise Ash of War. Now it actually works though, and as you can see in PvP, it really does work. It's so hard to avoid once you've been caught out by it, the range is really good, and obviously the damage is solid too. But hey, if we look at this in PvE, well, yeah, the range is really good, the damage is really good, the bleed buildup is really good. If you've got a bleed vulnerable enemy, this is a great choice. But actually, the base values are pretty damn solid. Just because of the range and the attack damage of it, well, yeah, you could use this against a boss that is immune to bleed and still do good damage. At a plus 10, we can check the scaling, which is a dex of B, so it scales really well with actually dex, as well as the more standard Arcane D scaling we see on a lot of Arcane weapons. It results in a blood loss buildup of 73 per hit. The moveset itself is just your standard katana moveset. This is the same as any katana in the game. Whether you're using a base katana or whatever, it's exactly the same moveset. The only thing that's different about this katana is, well, the very unique and cool look. And then, of course, the Corpse Piler Ash of War, which is incredible. To get your Rivers of Blood Katana then, you're going to need to come here to the Church of Repose in the Mountaintops of the Giants region. This is as you progress through the area and loop back around and make your way to, you know what, the boss fight that is here. I'm trying not to spoil. The problem is, as people have been telling me, that it doesn't work once you've actually killed the area boss. So you must come here to the Church of Repose and be invaded by the invader and kill him to get his helmet and of course the Rivers of Blood Katana before killing the area boss, from what I've been told. Next up then is ELEONORA'S Poleblade, a very obvious choice and another well known by the community, but actually less popular than the Rivers of Blood Katana for a few reasons. Let's take a look at it. It has a C scaling at dex at plus 10, and again, an Arcane of D. So flat out, the raw values of this weapon, the AR potential, well, it is lower than the katana, than Rivers of Blood. But you shouldn't let that fool you, because it actually has a higher blood loss buildup of 78. And when we look at the base moveset compared to the Rivers of Blood Katana, well, this is, frankly, there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more attacks landing. It's a lot longer of a combo. The R2, the heavy, is multiple hits during a spin. So if you're wanting to play an Arcane build and also pop that bleed a bit more consistently, especially against your PvE bosses, well then, yeah, actually the Poleblade is really the better option. What I think puts people off about this weapon compared to the Rivers of Blood is the range. You're quite static while doing this, right? But it's just the wind-ups, the slow mobility, and the Ash of War specifically, which is called, let me just check, the Blade Dance. Compared to the standing, beautiful reach of the Corpse Piler, this is a lot more mobile. It is a lot more flashy and backsteppy. So you're doing a front flip, you're leaping forward, doing an attack, and then after that, you're coming back away. So let's say you're against a target dummy, you're wanting to hit them as much as possible. All this movement is a little bit awkward. Even in PvP, I have to really cram myself against them to get this combo off and really kind of get them caught out through poise or a trade to catch someone with this. So, to say the least, it's a bit awkward. It's flashy, it's satisfying, it's cool, it's effective, especially if you can hit it, and its bleed build-up is better than the Rivers of Blood. But it takes a bit more effort, and like I say, is a bit more awkward to use, so maybe that's why the Rivers of Blood is slightly in favor compared to the Poleblade. Both are very good, and ultimately, it's going to be on your preference. To get the Poleblade, then, you're going to need to come here to the Second Church of Marais in the Altus Plateau region. It's fairly near the original bonfire, in the first church you're going to come across. When you enter here, you will be invaded by Eleonora, who you must defeat and kill to actually get her drops, including her weapon, the Poleblade. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You just need to come here and kill her. Our third weapon on this video, then, has got to be MOHGWYN'S Sacred Spear. This is, I mean, it's iconic. You literally get the incredible main attack, the ultimate ability of Mohg during his fight. As far as arcane weapons go, this is super unique and super cool, and definitely one of my favorite boss weapons in the game that you can use. Baseline, it is an incredible 86 blood loss build-up at plus 10 when we're reaching that soft cap of 50 at Arcane. It's actually a strength weapon more than a dex weapon, which is a surprise because this is actually a spear, you know, rather than a staff per se. So you've got a spear moveset. You have that incredible running R2 that catches people out in PvP. This thing has some serious range, and I keep seeing it in my duels lately for good reason. But it's not just good in PvP for that purpose or that bleed build-up, but in PvE against bosses or even better multiple targets, it's absolutely outrageous because this is a AoE ranged blood build-up. As you can see, it's just so good for multi-target in the world. It's so good. And then you're, of course, buffing up the weapon, so you've got this blood effect on your attacks. If I'm running, say, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, you're, of course, going to get that attack power buff whenever you get the proc. It's scaling at a C level on Arcane, which is pretty impressive. You're usually seeing a scaling of D on weapons like this. So if you keep your strength relatively low, put it at, say, 28, and then when you two-hand it, that'll scale up by 50% to 55. That's a nice soft cap hit right there. You have plenty of stats left over to level up your mind, and other things like intelligence or faith to run some other spells. Now, as I said, it is a boss weapon, so MOHGWYN'S Palace, the blood area, up there on top. This is, of course, the boss room. You come here, defeat the boss, and you're going to get his soul, and then we exchange that for this spear. If you don't know how to get to this area, you can either complete Marais' storyline to get here very early, or we can go to the consecrated snowfield and head west over here. There is a bloody portal that you can go through, and that will take you to the first grace of the area, and you can progress through and defeat the boss. I love this weapon just because you can pretend you're a Mohg. Boss weapons that really make you feel like a mini version of that boss are just super cool. Next up then has to be Bloody Helice. This weapon is currently being talked about quite a lot, and I actually think it's in a way being slept on, you know, the actual power of the weapon itself. But let me get into it to begin with. This weapon, right, is a heavy thrusting sword. So what that means is it's a thrusting sword, but it's a bit slower, and the output, the damage numbers you're going to see compared to a quick attacking thrusting sword is going to be bigger, right? But it's still a dex-based weapon. It's not like a strength weapon. It scales with Arcane at a B rating. That is really good. So the blood loss build-up I'm seeing right now on this weapon is 94 with my Arcane at that soft cap of 50. So yes, this is a very viable bleed weapon. It's a great thrusting weapon, which we don't often see in the meta, to be honest with you. And it even has a unique Ash of War, the Dynast Finesse. So what this is a little backstep, really nice evade, doesn't cost much FP, and then you follow that up with an R2, and you do a little thrust attack. You'd come straight back in, which is a huge gap closer. Pretty slick in PvP for evasion and coming straight back in, catching someone out, but also in general, you know, in boss fights. That's a nice little thing to have. This weapon is good. It is strong. It's effective. and it's a bleed weapon, and bleed is nuts right now, and Arcane works really well with that right now. So yes, this is a clear, very, very good pick. I'm hitting with a thrust, so I'm going to evade away from his attack, come back in thrust. It's good, man. This is a good weapon. It's got very low base requirements to use, and then of course you've got that really good scaling with the Arcane and reasonable dex scaling at C. So on that, I would say 50 Arcane and 55 dex would be a great idea to reach those middle soft caps, opening things up. This is a great option for you. But why am I saying a lot of people are talking about it right now for a different reason? Well, I made a video very recently talking about how this weapon is currently being used by speedrunners to absolutely dominate bosses through a moveset swap. As you can see, I'm holding a katana, and as I do the heavy attack with the katana, it's the overhead attack. When I do the war cry, Ash of War, on this katana, well, then the attack changes. It's a new war cry katana attack where I'm leaning forward and getting multiple hits and a big slam at the end. If you read the description of war cry, this cannot be put on things like thrusting swords, like this Bloody Helice weapon. But if we put the Bloody Helice in the offhand, then in the main hand, we still use the katana or any weapon that can have this war cry on it and do the war cry. We'll get that little damage buff. And if we then two-hand the offhand weapon, Bloody Helice, and try to use the R2, its R2 changes to the katana war cry heavy, meaning this incredibly strong weapon gets many little hits, dealing ridiculous damage, which will also consistently stagger a whole roster of enemies, including the final boss of the game. It's that good. And if it is vulnerable to bleed, you're getting the many hits as well, so you're gonna get the bleed proc. It is currently a ridiculously good option using this moveset swap glitch to destroy bosses. To get yourself the Bloody Helice, then you're going to need to come here. This is a ruin at the northern point of the Altus Plateau, very close to the bridge here of Iniquity. So you just come into the ruins. The name of the ruins is Wraithblood Ruins. I'm going to go underground. Big shock. Let's go. Inside, you have a very reasonable mini-boss who is kind of just a normal enemy that you're able to fight out in the world. And yeah, I'm able to kill him even on a low-level character who came and got this spear for a speed run. So not too much of a problem. Once you kill him, behind him, you're going to be able to go into the next room. And in the chest in there is, of course, the Bloody Helice. So yeah, man, like, this weapon, baseline, great weapon. Lots of utility, really like the moveset, really like the Ash of War, quite powerful, quality style arcane weapon. If you want to go further and do that moveset swap, my god, it's absolutely busted. So it has to be on this list. All right, for our last one, I have a bit of a wild card for you, like I do in these videos. I like to have one that's a bit more fun, a bit more interesting, rather than, okay, this is a straight up meta pick, and this is why it's meta. This is the newly fixed and working Marais' Executioner Sword, and I think it looks great. All the way back from when I was doing PvP days with Dark Souls 3, I always liked the Executioner Swords. There's something cool about that flat head style and this very horizontal combo that you get. And then when we two-hand, of course, it's a lot more vertical. Something about it is just simple. It feels good. I like it. And the thing about it is it weighs 11.5. So for a heavier strength weapon, right, or a big sword rather, it's actually quite light. Whatever you do with a sword in your build, it's the Ash of War that really does it for me, the dancing blade. You are able to hold L2 down and channel in this red light, and at pretty solid medium range, repeatedly attack a target. It's going to hit and hit, and then come back, and then you get a follow-up strike as well. You combine something like that with, say, the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, where you're getting faster and bigger attack power based on successive attacks. Well, your attack power just skyrockets up as you're hitting a target so many times like this from range as well. The damage of that is going to skyrocket if you get up close to an enemy and get the sort of full second and a half to pull this off on a boss. Whereas in PvP, it's a lot less reliable, it's a lot less consistent to pull that full thing off, but it really does catch people. The short to medium range of it, the channeled nature of it, the many hits that people seem to just not expect to come out of it. And then there's that follow-up attack that comes out when they actually make it to you after avoiding the attack. I could see a build where we're running this dancing blade, right? And then we're mixing and matching with some spells using the incantations of maybe the Beastmen. When we take a look at the stats of the weapon then, it is actually a B scaling in strength, despite also having some arcane and dex to it. As we level up the arcane, we're going to improve the power of that Ash of War. And yeah, it's one that's not based on bleed, so that's a nice bit of variety. For me, this is a really fun concept. You're like Darth Vader or something. Ever since I saw the boss using this originally, I was like, well, I want to run this weapon just because it's cool. But now it's actually working, and it's very fun to use. But those are my 5 top Arcane weapons right now. We have 4 meta picks and then a cool one with this sword. How are you guys enjoying Arcane so far? I'm really happy to see that it's actually working, and it's also ridiculously good. It's properly established itself in the meta, and it's put in a whole load of new builds, which is fun to see. But if you enjoyed the video or found it interesting, please do drop a like so we can make more like this. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.